Hi there, and welcome to yet another episode of the SOHB Story State of the Art Branding Podcast. Today's guest has done a lot of things which a lot of other people have not done, and that is precisely the reason why he's here today. He's digitized news well before India discovered internet. He built broadband temples across, if I recollect right, almost 105 cities, and probably a paradigm shift at that point in time, given the time at which in which it was done, and also making a lot of people, especially in the media circle, envious would be the fact that how he's made Marathi one of the most profitable languages in digital media. So, without further ado, and without wanting to steal his thunder, let us welcome Hemant Jain to the SOHB Story podcast. Thank you so much for doing this with us, Hemant.
Thank you, Suresh, for having me over. It's indeed a pleasure to be on this show.
Likewise. Thank you for coming on. So, I mean, I might have got my stats wrong, so feel free to correct me. Those days of 14,400 or 14,600 baud modems, and at that point in time, did you actually have a blueprint? Okay, because you embarked on the journey. It's like one of those classic cases when you're actually jumping out of a plane and doing either of the two things, checking whether you have a parachute, and if you have a parachute, you're fixing the parachute down the way. So was it vision, was it classic genius, or was it overlapping, both of it?
I would say it was more accidental. So I still remember in 95 when I was with HCL Comnet, there used to be something called as a TCP/IP shell account. And we used to wait for minutes and hours for the ping to come back to us. And then we moved on to the BOM 3 VSNL router. And I still remember those days as young naughty boys. We used to wait for half an hour for Jennifer Lopez to get downloaded. And I tell this to a lot of my colleagues today that it taught me patience very early stage of my life. I would say nobody exactly knew what is the future. We didn't really understand the word blueprint. Was there a vision? Not really. But I think so there's a lot of curiosity amongst all of us. So when we I would attribute the word accidentally. I got into internet when I joined the Indian Express group, and they were setting up, apparently it was India's first newspaper to go online. And those were the days when you used to take A4 size blank print papers and draw out pages, HTML pages. And we were all imagining how a product should be and how should the site look like. And very exciting moments, because what we did way back then was not coming from a premise of I know it all, but was from a premise of can I learn the medium better, can I experiment with the medium. And I think so that was a starting point of something which kind of shaped my career very beautifully. Because I got into a medium which suddenly was a two-way immersive medium rather than a traditional one-way communication medium. So if you ask me from how it kind of shaped the way I looked at life, is more in terms of bringing in an element of imagination, because I knew that what you put out on this side would get a kind of response or create an impact on the other side. And I would say that was the starting point of the journey. And very initial days, nobody really knew what the internet was about. And I still remember Bank of India used to be on the first floor of Express Towers. And as an extremely self-motivated and curious young boy, I landed up into their office. I met the general manager there, and I said, can I build a website for you? And they were pretty, amazed by this whole thing around internet. And at that point of time, the only the only gentleman who had really created something of what I could call size was Mr. Rajesh Jain of India World. And in fact, our entire expressindia.com website, we even didn't have the URL indianexpress.com, was hosted on the India World servers. And I would say that was the starting point of my journey, and it's been 3 decades now. I've still not left digital.
Absolutely. That is what I'm thank you for triggering the next segue. So almost 3 decades in, and digital is transformed. It has traveled a lot. If you're offered an opportunity to take back something that you built, in other words, maybe kill your darlings, okay, what would that be?
I wouldn't say kill, I would say reimagine some of the pieces. And I think so what started off as an early days of internet, I still believe they were one of the most beautiful period of internet compared to what I see today. So in 97, I still remember one day I had a meeting with Kurian Matthews, and he used to be at the helm in charge of TBW Anthem. And they were kind of setting up the interactive shop. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that TBW Interactive was India's first digital agency, and I kind of was a part of it. And
this is during the George John days?
Yeah, during the George John days. And during the early days, most of the agencies were out there offering their clients an opportunity to make their presence felt on the web. And I had kind of got into this whole zeal of going and educating clients and, the owners of the companies, saying, how do you go about building brands online? And I still remember our first biggest project was with a client out in Delhi called the Somani Tiles. And you would be very surprised, Suresh, in 97 we built a site where you could actually go onto somanitiles.com, you could select the tiles, you could select the configuration, the way it needs to be packed into the box in terms of the number of tiles, etc. The only thing which we couldn't do at that point of time was e-commerce, but the final order would go as a email notification to their sales department, and then they would take it offline in terms of completing the payment formalities, etc. And similarly, like TBWA, then I kind of went on to work with Ishan to create another digital agency which was called EuroRSCG Interactive. And internationally, globally, EuroRSCG Interaction at that point of time was the 3rd largest interactive agency in the world, and there were a lot of international clients that they were working with, and Intel was one of the very large clients which the digital arm of EuroRSCG handled globally. So the whole vision was, could India become an offshore design and development center for the global agency? So we worked with a lot of brands which included the likes of Intel, Davidoff, Mercedes-Benz, etc. And I would still want to believe that those early days, whether it was me playing an instrumental role in setting up TBW Interactive or EuroRSCG Interactive, and finally working directly with the legendary advertising legend, Mr. A.G. Krishnamurthy for Mudra Digital Consulting. I believe those days were so experimental that none of us could say that, hey, I know the internet. So there was a huge amount of focus as far as consumer centricity is concerned. So whether it was designing a brand brochure or kind of developing an application, so whether it was a kind of a product centricity or it was more like a marketing centricity, so media was not very high at that point of time. It was largely, the entire effort was focused on saying, how can I get my brand's presence more relevant on the web in a manner that they are able to engage with a very, very limited sized customers who are online at that point of time. So I still believe that that element of innovation, that element of, building in products which had a very high level of consumer centricity. There was a much better storytelling happening at that point of time, because it was not about measurement at that stage. It was about building at that stage. It was about connecting at that stage. It was about saying, can I be more meaningful in a medium which was more, newer? So I would say that is something which I miss today, because today I believe that the whole essence or the power of internet as a medium is somewhere kind of lost more in terms of trying to be very, very measurable in every single thing which we are trying to do.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, the wonderful journey that you experienced, Hemant, which brings me to and I'm remaining at that point in time itself. I don't want to let time stand still. So when you were setting up this 241 broadband temples in 105 cities, did you ever get a chance to sit incognito in an internet cafe and look at someone who's experienced internet for the first time in their lives? And what did that made you feel, and what are the kind of, I don't want nostalgia as such, but at that point in time, it would have done something to you and your team, right?
Yeah, I think so. The entire journey of setting up 241 broadband cafes in the 104 cities and towns of India, I would say was one of the most mesmerizing experiences of my life. I found myself suddenly into a university which was set up on the back of the vision of Mr. Mukesh Ambani. And the vision was very simple. He told us that in one of the meetings that while Reliance Infocom is setting up 64,000 route kilometers of optical fiber cable, and then he had the vision that when he will bring fiber to home, how do you get people to subscribe to that is exactly, giving them or enabling them with those experiences through this chain of broadband cafes. So whether it was in terms of giving them an opportunity to video chat with their family and friends, or we set up these, Polycom equipped conference rooms inside every retail format where people could actually connect with their peers in other towns and cities in form of sales conferences or in terms of recruiting people, etc. There was, this whole large LAN WAN connectivity where all the 241 outlets were connected, where kids could actually do multiplayer, multi-city online gaming, etc. And then we had a cafe. Now, what did we do? We actually helped India completely reimagine life of what broadband can do to it. So I would here like to share some of the few examples. So I still remember our conference rooms for the largest times were used by corporates for some of the low-hanging activities, which included interviewing candidates or doing their sales review meetings or doing their dealer meetings, etc.
Or having lunch.
Not exactly. But we thought to ourselves that how we could create some very interesting use cases which would not confine the use of multimedia digital conferencing to the corporate walls, but bring it out to homes. And I still remember the first campaign which me and the team conceptualized was Karwa no Chauth of distances. It was around Karwa Chauth where we said break away the distance. And I still remember those moments when we had women whose husbands were traveling for their meetings, etc. They came to the Reliance Web World video conferencing rooms and they could see their better halves on the other side, and they performed the rituals of Karwa Chauth. An extremely emotional moment for many, many women in our country, where we said that going forward in future, the distance would not kind of become a barrier for you to continue your life in the way and perform certain, enjoy the festivals together. So what started with Karwa Chauth moved on to Raksha No Bandhan of distances, where we got the brother and sisters remotely placed within the country to virtually tie the Rakhis, and we got Cadbury to kind of come and become a partner, where we gave away a box of Cadbury chocolates from the brother to the sisters. And we did India's first digital elocution competition where more than 700 schools participated. I still remember we converted our video conferencing room into a rare eye surgery where doctors across top 10 cities of the world participated. So the point I'm trying to bring here is technology, infrastructure, for me, has always been enablers of the kind of experiences that you could create for humanity, for people around us. And that is where I go back to say it is about imagination. It is about connecting the dots, saying if this is my enabler, what are the kind of experiences that I could create? And when you are able to create a genuine, connect between the technology as an enabler and a human experience, is where your cycle of monetization kind of sets in. So there are so many different examples, that. So one of my biggest learnings in my life has been that I still remember I was working very closely with McKinsey at the time of launch on a program called Path to Profitability. And we said, hey, let us pick up 3 stores in Bangalore and 3 stores in Chennai and kind of build a model of saying, how do we, launch the balance 241 outlets. Now, as I traveled to Chennai, so we had 3 outlets. One was on Nangambakam Road, the other was Anna Nagar, and the third was Besan Nagar. So I realized within the first 48 hours of visiting these catchments that each of these catchments are very unique. So you could never have a cookie cutter solution from a marketing standpoint to each of these stores. So while Besan Nagar was a very, very premium, high profile residential catchment, Anna Salai was a very, very, I would say, commercial high street place. And Nungambakam was again a very, very different kind of, premium high street location. So a lot in terms of your visual merchandising, your product offering, your pricing has to be a function of the catchment. And what we did was something very, very unique. So the first time in the country, I rolled out a program. It gave me an opportunity to roll out a program called TGMP, which was called the Target Group Meeting Points. So what I did is I kind of created a spatial map of a 2-kilometer radii around each of these Reliance Web World outlets. And we said if 16 to 24 years young boys and girls are my target audience, where do they reside in this catchment? Where do they kind of are hanging out on those popular areas? So whether it was their college, whether it was a Satyam Highway broadband center at that point of time, or it was a Snowball ice cream parlor, or it was a multiplex, the marketing team started to kind of plot each of the target group meeting points around a 2-kilometer radius, because a thumb rule of retail suggests that 80% of your audience would largely come from a catchment of 2 kilometers. And Suresh will be surprised to know this kind of then got replicated across 204 cities and 241 catchment areas. And I had such a large, enriched data set sitting with me. So I exactly knew that if I'm talking about a Brigade Road store in Bangalore, and if there is a multiplex around, what is a footfall in the multiplex, what is a footfall in the mall, etc. So what we initiated would probably, I would very confidently say was one of India's largest target group meeting point program, which essentially became the core of my marketing flux. So we didn't go above the line. We just went very, very experiential, very, very on ground. And the reason being, people really didn't understand what is broadband, what it could do to their lives. So the best way we thought would be to get people to the store. So we started engaging with the youth of the country in various kinds of, gamification programs, quizzes, etc. in their own catchment. We gave away a 30 rupees, 50 rupees, 100 rupees broadband voucher. And we say, hey, if you want to experience real broadband, come to Reliance Web World. And we had these real smart young boys and girls who we hired as web guides. The moment you had a walk-in, we would make them feel comfortable. We would give them a demo of what is internet, what is broadband, what can gaming do to you, what can video chat do to you. I think so it completely changed the way India started to look in terms of from, an internet to broadband experience and how it could impact their lives. So I can actually go on and on in terms of, so for example, it was the first time in the country we kind of did a multiplayer, multi-city online gaming contest. So we had Microsoft participating, we had Intel participating. So it started off saying a mohalla in Bombay competes within the mohalla in Bombay. So for example, a Hirapanna store would compete with a Juhu store, and the winning team here would then compete with the next city within Maharashtra, and the winner of Maharashtra goes on to compete at the national level. And what an experience. I mean, the way these kids used to come with their gear, with their mouse, I mean, it was like as if it's a outdoor sport happening. And the other very interesting thing which I realized, especially keeping the gaming genre in mind, I still remember these were the last days of the financial year, and I said, hey, we need to meet our targets. So I launched a big pack. I said, you pay us 300 rupees and you get 600 rupees of gaming time. And I thought it would be extremely successful. And when I started to look at daily sales data, I realized it's not picking up. So I said, hey, what's the best way? The best way is to go and meet these gamers. So when I started to meet these gamers within Bombay, I went to the Juhu store, the Hirapanna store, the Tardev stores, etc. And I started talking to them. I realized that they don't have 300 rupees. You ask them to spend daily 20 rupees, 30 rupees, they get it. Where do they get it? They get it from their dad's wallet. But 300 rupees, they don't have the courage to ask their parents to give them 300 rupees for gaming. And this was not just confined to Mumbai as an insight. During the same period, I traveled to Calcutta, I traveled to Delhi, Chandigarh, Lucknow. I got a common insight. That was a starting point where I started to somewhere build a strong belief that India is a sachet pricing model. And when later I went on to lead the mobile entertainment business at Hangama, this insight kind of was validated that India today is one of the largest micro-payment and sachet pricing model country in the world.
Interesting. I think going back to your earlier articulation, it takes a lot to make geography history. You mentioned about the Karwa Chauth and the Raksha Bandhan and all of that. And then as we talk in today's parlance about community engagement, influencing, impacting, which is exactly what you did way back with the gaming competitions and getting people into the stores and all of that. And probably the cabin care sachet pricing thing, I think a lot of insights that are flowing over the past 3 decades, and which actually prompts me to ask you, given your current responsibility and currently what you're championing and powering at Lokmat, you've made Marathi not only fashionable but also profitable, and is that in some way, and I don't mean it as any kind of provoking question, but is it in any way showing some kind of a mirror to mainstream media?
Interesting question, Suresh. You know, for me, regional was something I picked it up as a challenge. So I still remember when I met Rishi Dada for the first time. I love the simplicity of the brief. He said, we have been number one in print for 100 years. Can you make us number one in Marathi language on internet in India? And typically, you know, the kind of past assignments I had been on, I always felt that how can I confine myself to a single language? But I think so he was absolutely clear with regard to the merit of focusing my knowledge of internet, my knowledge of community building to a single language, which was Marathi. So when I went to the drawing board and I started to ask myself, what would be the best way for me to achieve this objective? I said, I have to leverage the strength of Lokmat. And Lokmat being such a legacy brand, what does it stand for? What are its strengths? So apart from their geographical presence, which I thought was very mesmerizing, because it is one of the only news media brand today within the state of Maharashtra which delivers newspaper to the last state transport bus stop, whether it's a town, village or a city, which brought me the whole concept of hyperlocal. And you know, in any case, I always knew that as internet grows and with the manner in which the smartphones were becoming more affordable, the next growth of internet in India would be driven by languages. And a language consumer is far, far more, I would say, loyal in terms of intent to a news media brand because of the trust in content and hyperlocal coverage, which makes the news media brand more relevant into the lives of the people. I embarked on a journey way back in 2016. I still remember when I joined, they had a small team, a website which was hosted on a third-party content management system. It used to crash with 3,000 concurrent users. I said, why don't we embark on a journey to build the largest community of millennials consuming Marathi language content across genres, beyond the realms of politics, news and current affairs, into spaces which includes entertainment, lifestyle, education, sports, etc. Things which are a daily part of people's life. Areas which remain unexplored in the regional language or an Indic language space. And at that point of time, I could never have imagined that the 2017 KPMG Internet Language Report came as a big surprise to me, because it brought out a fact which was extremely insightful. It said by now we would have crossed around 740 million odd internet users, of which close to 540 million internet users would be language users. 199 would be English, and within the cohort of 540 million internet users, Hindi would be the number one language, which is with around 200 million users. The next biggest language which the report pegged would be Marathi with around 55 to 60 million, followed by Bengali and the southern languages, the entire cluster of southern languages to be around 100 million odd. So it kind of motivated me. And from building and re-engineering and revamping Lokmat.com, which today, over the last 5 to 6 years, has been the number one visited Marathi news and infotainment website, to getting into spaces like entertainment. I didn't want to do Bollywood because there are zillions of YouTube channels and Instagram pages doing Bollywood. So I said, where does the opportunity lie? Why don't I just confine myself to covering the real and real life of Marathi stars? And in Marathi entertainment, unlike Bollywood, the television entertainment is much bigger than the movies. So if you look at annually, I would say there would be close to 90 to 100 Marathi films which get theatrically released. But if you look at the time spent by the audiences watching the Marathi soaps on the popular television channels is much higher. So we kind of started to kind of aggregate, curate, create original content around Marathi entertainment. And today we operate one of the largest Marathi entertainment channel, which is called Lokmat Filmi. And all our products are available on web, video on YouTube and Facebook, and social media in the form of Instagram and Facebook. So we don't create content which is very cookie cutter based. We understand the science of creating content which has differentiated us. So each of these teams are different. So the team which creates web or text based content is different vis-a-vis a video team and our social media team. Now coming to the fact that what was driving principle behind creating one of the largest community of Marathi audiences online was largely to see how I could engage with and create a relevant cohort by offering them relevant content. So today there are communities which are consuming entertainment content. We have the largest women community. 4 to 5 million women from Maharashtra come and consume very credible, rich, women-centric content, ranging from shopping to beauty, fashion, parenting, mental health, and health being one of the largest drivers within the category. We cater to the farming community, personal finance, etc. And then these are all products which have come out of insights. So for example, as I started to travel the length and breadth of the state, I realized that most of the people in tier 2, tier 3 can't decode economic times, can't decode any of the financial dailies. And Maharashtrians largely have been extremely conservative, rightfully, in terms of their investment decisions. So they either go to a post office to invest in a post office scheme, or they invest in gold and silver. So I said, how could Lokmat be an enabler in terms of helping them make informed decisions on personal finance, where to invest, what's a mutual fund, new spaces to invest in, etc. So I would say most of it was not inspired by the dollars we make, but was more inspired by, can we become a much stronger brand, leveraging, one, our legacy, and second is leveraging the medium to make information more enriching, thereby increasing the social bandwidth of people. And I would say today, the way we are engaged, especially if you look at a lokmatsakhi.com platform, I mean, we've got some of the most unread stories being decoded, where we run a program called Super Sakhi, which is about stories of women who are doing exceptionally well in their life in terms of their contributing back to the society, but were never spoken of. So we cover them. There are women who run these small businesses. So we kind of reach out to them. We give them a platform to come and talk to us. Health, Suresh, I wanted to share this with you. One day my editor, she came to me and she said, "Sir, you don't understand. There is such a big health issue among women in Maharashtra, and they are just not able to come out and share their concerns and their problems." I said, "Don't worry, just go ahead and let's create a platform where women can come and openly share their problems." So at one end, we had this whole community of women spread across 36 districts. And in any case, we today run the largest on-ground women community program called Sakhi Manch, where every year close to 500,000 women, they come and voluntarily subscribe to a program, which is the largest in the country. And to the other extreme end of this entire value chain, we started to kind of create a community of doctors across, areas of concern. And we got them together to create content, to create programs which could kind of address a lot of burning issues. I continue to believe that if you have problem solving as your approach to building a business, though it might not reward you in short term, but long run, if that becomes the premise of people believing that in some way it is involved in the journey of leading a better life, then there are multiple ways to kind of unlock the value.
Thank you for speaking so eloquently, Hemant, about the content, the enrichment, the impact that it can have on community and your reader, user, viewer base. So while remaining at content, I understand that you also coach authentic content creators, right? So I'm curious to understand which is that version of Hemant Jain which does not make it to the feed, given your positioning on that. So the reason I'm asking that, Hemant, is at SOHB Story also we believe that authenticity is a competitive advantage, right? So I know you're always endeavoring to kind of champion that. So I also wanted to get your perspective,
Sure.
rather than have it as a one-dimensional view.
Sure. I think it's a very, very brilliant question, because today I think so authenticity is missing, and authenticity is more to do with what kind of belief system do you kind of show up in life. And I think so it's very difficult for you to differentiate authenticity when you are at work or when you are at home. So we have been very, very conscious about, especially being a legacy brand where people across the age demographics and geography have trusted you for years. And I always say this proudly with an example that during COVID, when Maharashtra was struggling with the supply of blood, our chairman came out saying, I want to launch a program called Rakta Cha Nata, which is your relation with the blood. And we did this campaign across the 36 district places of Maharashtra, where we probably collected the largest blood supply to kind of help a lot of people here. Actually goes on to show the kind of faith and connect people have with the brand. Now that cannot be diluted at any cost for some KPIs called page views and site visits. Metrics. So we have been absolutely conscious of the fact that depending upon the genre of content, what should be and how we continue to be authentic. So for example, when you look at news, now news is a very tempting space, right?
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yes. But we have been very conscious about it. We ensure that there's always, a conversation between both the parties involved before we report the news. It cannot be one-sided. Second, we never try to drag the family and friends into the news. And this has been a very, very clear diktat to the team. The third is we do not make comments on community at large, because I believe that would be too overgeneralization. So we have a very guiding, very thoughtful philosophy basis, which, especially in news as a genre, the editorial is taken care of. So I believe that builds trust, that builds relevance in the audience. Now when you go to entertainment again, the Marathi entertainment industry is a small community. They have friends. So we also ensure that we don't do content entertaining content at the cost of somebody's personal relationship and life.
I think, if I hear you right, Hemant, what you're alluding to is you will always want the audience, number one in the pecking order vis-a-vis the algorithm.
Correct.
Or the other diktats that big tech and other, because those are very, very possible, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
So you are actually saying that I don't want that. My audience comes first.
Correct.
And subsequently all the others.
Correct.
I think hats off. Very, very, and it's a delicate eye. It's not an easy thing to pull off.
No, so I would tell you, when we launched LokmatSakhi.com, there was always a tendency to prove back to the board saying, hey, we are doing great numbers, we've got so many unique visitors, so many page views. But then I realized in between that there was a little thin line which was being crossed. So I kind of sat down with the team and I said, there are no metrics for you. The only metrics is credible content. And I think so it doesn't matter whether, because you can't create an impact, you can't build trust basis certain backend KPIs. You can only build trust basis what you put out there in terms of what you publish, what kind of content you create. And when you're coming from a belief that you want to impact people's life in a positive manner, then you need to have content which is well researched, which is authentic, which has people's voice in it, which is, going to the doorstep and co-creating content. So I believe that way we have huge amount of support and I would say coexistence with the board, with Rishi especially, and I must say that I, over the last 10 years now in Lokmat, I have never ever been asked to cover or not to cover a specific personality or to have a particular tonality of news. And we continue to be very, very, motivated and inspired by the essence of the event rather than trying to be shaded by the consequence. And that, has made me and my team extremely, extremely confident about our outlook towards the kind of content we need to create. Yeah.
So I think, again, I repeat my earlier articulation, this is a very tough act to pull off, so kudos to you and your team to do that. And while I remain at that, I wanted to ask you, when you're sitting with a media strategist, okay, this is, given the multiple hats that you've worn and the current hat that you're wearing, do you see them? The perception is that because it is vernacular, it is lesser. Do you have that battle to kind of conquer?
Yeah. You are absolutely right. I mean, Suresh, for the longest time, I've refrained myself or I've shied away from knocking the doors of advertising agency for media business. I've always had teams and I was always there at the back end in terms of helping them create solutions, because creating solutions has always excited me, right? 2 years back, I was just talking to myself and I said, hey, you have done products, you have created interesting products, marketing, tech enablement, insights. What is missing in your journey? So the voice from inside said, hey dude, you have never gone to agencies knocking doors to get business. So I said, chalo, let's do this also. So I started that journey, and honestly, I never even bothered to ask my team initially that who's the planner here, who's the buyer there. And so I said, let's start. And I started to call up people. And Suresh, I want to tell you, it has been such an overwhelming journey that most of the guys who today are sitting with the top 6, top 7 networks have all been friends, say 2 decades back, 2.5 decades back. I've worked with them. And the way they've showered love to me, the way they've showered respect to me, I really feel happy for how I have showed up as a professional over the last 30 years. And today I can very proudly say that the kind of ecosystem I operate with is something which gives me strength to pitch a regional play to an advertiser. But to come specific to, very pointed to your answer, the conversation of the language play being the most sexiest on internet are only restricted to conferences and events. But actually when you go out asking dollars, it's difficult for you to compete with English language. I think so it is a more lot to do with the mindset, whether it's the guy on the brand side or someone on the agency side. Would it shift? I think so. The whole manner in which digital media is being bought is going through massive shift. So what used to be investments in top of the funnel, which was more branding, is now very swiftly shifting to the bottom of the funnel, which is more sales led. And that is where 70 to 75% of buys which happen today are very performance led buys. The other interesting aspect here is typically how does a buyer buy? He says, I've got a national brief on digital. So I'm just restricting my conversation to news media companies. So now typically when you have a national brief, we are generally not called out, because for a national brief you have publishers operating in 12 languages, 8 to 12 languages, who have got presence in different, geographies. They get called out, they put out a national plan. We only get called out when there is a regional plan specific to Maharashtra or a couple of states, is when we get called out. Now that's been a journey where I've been, very strongly having conversations, advocating, saying regional is not socioeconomic poor. And when you look in terms of...
Nice phrase. Can you just repeat that? Regional is not socio-economic poor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because if you look at a single day, the largest number of Mercedes which got sold in the country was in a city called Aurangabad. So I wouldn't ever say that regional is socio-economic poor. If you also look at the Ernst & Young report on the economic and statistical data, it suggests that the disposable income which is available in the top 20 cities, and if I combine all the tier 2, tier 3 cities, it is the same. So going back, so my entire argument on the buy side, media buy side, rests with the premise that even when you look at a national campaign, you are today happy saying, oh, I just covered 2-3 million in Maharashtra. But is it creating the right impact for your brand with the limited reach, which gets bundled in as part of a large plan? So yes, it's tough to sell regional language play, but I also foresee a huge opportunity, given the fact that we have a very large hyperlocal audience coming and consuming content. Because of late, over the last 6 months, there are a lot of briefs which have started to come to us with saying, do you have audiences to offer which is beyond Bombay and Pune? And also somewhere, also the recently held DNPA conclave, I did a panel where I had got Karthik Sharma, Group CEO of Omnicom, Vinod Thadani, who's the CEO of iProspect, Santosh from InOcean, all to come together and talk about what is the future of news media publishers, given the fact that if the way I look at the entire space today, India's digital advertising market, according to my estimates and validated by folks in the industry, is around 70,000 crores. And out of these 70,000 crores, roughly, and it could be here and there by 10-15%, around 45,000 crores is largely grabbed by the big tech. 15,000 crores rest with the new boys, which are your quick commerce boys, the retail media tech. Roughly around 4,000, 5,000 crores is OTT, and the balance 5,000 crores is where the entire industry is fighting. And if I have to look at the top 20 news publishers on digital, should not be more than 1,800 to 2,000 crores, which is a little notch above the affiliates. So how and what do we do now is going to be the most interesting journey of how do we pivot, how do we create new revenue streams. So if you look at most of the news publishers who come from a print background are also pivoting in their own way into subscription model, which I don't know how much of it would scale up into sizable revenues. And there are also spaces like content commerce, because e-commerce has become so, common now. So how do you initiate commerce on the back of your authentic content within a user set which is offering an opportunity to purchase a product in the context of a content, etc., is something which, is guys like me have to, spend a lot of time trying to see how we could evolve into different newer forms of revenue streams to make and continue to make these businesses profitable.
I think, there is a lot of opportunity there. We will discuss that offline, for obvious reasons. But two things that actually stood out, and you'll have to give me permission to kind of do that. Two words that stood out actually. One word that you used was the mindset. When you're talking about the haves, have-nots, in terms of the vernacular vis-a-vis the others, the privileged. And the other one was vernacular itself. Okay. How do we kind of redefine this? And I'm just looking at it from a SOHB Story angle. How do we make vernacular as, we'll respell it, okay? Because words have got magic. Words can imbibe into the culture can actually transform. So here is, based on what you articulated, Hemant, vernacular becomes respelled as WONACULAR. Vernacular. I won. Because of doing so many of the other things that you've been doing, that is the first part of it. Mindset. If people can't re-engineer or recalibrate that, again, SOHB Story would like to kind of respell it as MINESET. It is a mindset. It's not a mindset because it's dangerous, because you're rigid, you're fixated, you're prejudiced, you're biased, right? Because a lot of times the metrics can also lie, right? So some of the data, some of the kind of touch points that you shared, unless and until you're wielding the megaphone on that and shouting from the rooftops, a lot of people will not kind of accept it, right? It still remains under the radar, right? So I see that, again, based on what you shared with us, there is a huge amount of untapped, unreleased, to be unleashed opportunity that one could explore, and that will be stemming from the fact, the kind of work that you're doing. Right, it's obviously you have to have some kind of a premise and a foundation for that. The foundation is there, is what I reckon. That's my 2 cents perch on that,
Sure.
Okay, so I've been asking all the questions, very unfair. I want you to ask me any question that you feel like. Put me in the spot, whatever it is. including what the hell is SOHB Story or whatever that you might coming to mind or anything else. Doesn't matter, because we believe at SOHB Story that we need to be democratic, we're equals. It's a two-way street, and it's a beautiful place to kind of coexist, co-share, co-understand, seek, learn. So over to you, Hemant.
So literally, I wanted to understand from you, why is it called the SOHB Story?
So the vested interest would be that we love playing with words. Words have the power, the gravitas, the compelling narrative arc that can actually make an impact and a difference, right? One of our earlier guests also asked me a similar question: why SOHB Story? The first thing that comes to mind is SOHB Story, SOB. And then probably today, because your biggest social currency is attention, then we say that there is an H entrenched there, so that is the heart.
Oh,
And we do everything with the heart.
beautiful.
If it begins there, then the rest of it follows, right? So that's why SOHB Story. And also from a point of view of the branding zeitgeist, Hemant, we believe that brands need to be felt for people to be loyal, committed to them. Otherwise, 5 rupees cheaper, 10 rupees cheaper, they're going somewhere else. So which is what we internally define as UFP. Because USP is dead and buried. The obituary is already written. If somebody is not written it, they're late. Right? Pardon the pun. But UFP is the unique feeling proposition.
Okay.
If Jio or Apple or Singapore Airlines or X makes me feel the way I want to be felt, I will go back to them repeatedly. Knowing fully well that might be a premium on their product or service or whatever the case might be. Right? So the unique feeling proposition, when I'm thinking with the heart and acting with the heart, that stays with the brand far more longer and vice versa. So that is the reason why SOHB Story, and that's the reason why it is state-of-the-art branding.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for asking. All right.
It was running in my mind for a long time, so I thought I should ask you, why is it a SOHB Story?
Yeah. That was my SOHB Story. Okay. All right. So anything else you want to ask me?
No, I would ask you at some point of time for sure.
Okay. So I'm all ears. I'm all yours. So now, Hemant, we come to, after all the thunder, we come to the lightning round.
Oh, I'm in the hot spot.
Yeah. So some rapid fire or rabbit fire, whatever you might want to kind of interpret that as. And as always, please speak from the heart. The first thing that comes to mind. So, and here I'm entitled to look at the paper as I'm talking to you. Okay, they are being very, very gracious with my old age, and I can't remember things, so I'm allowed to look at the paper as I'm asking you the question. So, shall we?
Sure. Do I have 50-50 and phone a friend?
Yeah, there are possibilities. Okay, here's the first one, Hemant. Digital media's biggest lie, it tells itself.
The reactions.
Okay. When you say reaction, you're referring to the...
Likes, comments, share.
Yeah. One word for the Indian internet in 1996 and one word for it today.
Curiosity then, exploited now.
Beautiful. Very nicely said. What a nice spectrum there. Marathi or English, which do you think in when you're actually worried?
English.
The metric you have completely stopped trusting.
Views.
Hemant Jain at 60, still building or finally burning something down?
Looking forward to a new beginning.
Thank you. So that's well done.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Do I have a gift hamper?
करण से मंगा है अभी आ रहा है आज गुड़ी पड़ा हुआ है ना छुट्टी पे है. Okay. So I know this is very, very close to your heart, Hemant, and it will be absolutely remiss on my part not to kind of get into that territory. It's like, so I'm very, very eager to understand that other aspect of what you're very, very deeply passionate about, and which you want to articulate about, something that is and thinking about it, मेरे मन में कुछ होता है. So let's get to your the fascination that you have, how you got into the coaching, mentoring, guiding endeavor, and what actually kind of, because there is a different kind of an ROI on that, right? Which is not a measurable, typical, conventional ROI. I'm more excited to understand that, how you got into it and what are you extracting out of it from a place in the heart more than anything else, and in place in somebody else's hearts as well.
Yeah, Suresh, thank you for this one. It's indeed something which is really very close to my heart. And I didn't get into it. I thought I was always into it. It is just that I wanted to get more scientifically into validating my thoughts and actions. So I had been fortunate to lead teams since a very early age of my life. So the first time I led a team was in 1997 at MBWA Interactive. I was 24 years then. Followed with Euro RSCG, and then at Mudra. Apparently when I joined Mudra as a GM, I was the youngest GM in the industry then at 26. And I've always been fascinated by people. Not literally knowing that internet is a knowledge economy. And I remember when I was in class 8, and thanks to my dad and his library of books, being a typical BITS Pilani student, alumni, I realized very early stage I was more fascinated reading management books rather than worrying about geometry, algebra, etc. So when I was in class 8th, I read this book called In Search for Excellence by Tom Peters. And there was a abbreviation there called MBWA, Managing by Wandering Around. It hit me. It stayed with me. And I still remember in 97, for the first time, when I presented the digital strategy to Star TV as a young kid, Peter Mukherjee invited me for a party in the evening where we had some of the senior folks from Hong Kong who had flown in. So Peter took me on the side and he asked me, from which MBA school are you from? So I smiled and I said, hey, I am an MBWA from In Search for Excellence by Tom Peters. It has been the guiding force behind me. It did two things to me. It made me learn from people all my journey, and I continue to learn from people. And I think so that is also largely contributed by being extremely selfless as a human being, minus any kind of ego, though I think so ego resides in all of us, but I think so the level I would say is far, far more controllable. So all through these years, when I dealt with my team members, it was not about a transaction. Now, what is a transaction? A transaction is about getting work done. But the thought which always kept driving me is about saying, how can I make and contribute to making my colleagues' life and future better? So what did it do? It made me show more trust. It made me allow them to make mistakes. It made me give them things to do which they never did. And somewhere I believe when I look back, so many of them today are doing extremely well. And it went into their personal spaces. I still remember in one of my assignments, one of my VPs was extremely unhappy. And one day I called him and I said, what's your problem? What is happening to you? He said, we're not able to my wife is not able to conceive a child. I said, no problem. So I got him to meet one of the best IVF doctors. I kind of accompanied them. And they were blessed with a child. And there was a very different kind of joy there. So there are many such examples where I have not restricted myself to the position or the title I had, but went beyond, not with an objective, not with an outcome saying if I do this, then he will do this. No, because I thought it is my duty to kind of show up at times to so many people. And slowly I started to realize that as a leader, what I am today grappling with are not issues related to functional or domain expertise, but are related to challenges people are facing emotionally and mentally. And there were certain incidents which happened 2 years back, which kind of very emotionally drained me at the workplace with some of my colleagues, what they went through in their personal lives, that I decided that I have to contribute back in a more meaningful way to people's life. And for that, I thought the best starting point would be for me to personally go through a journey of self-discovering. And I was so fortunate, Suresh, to join this program from Kocharya. I actually joined the program thinking it's a leadership program. And in the first session, and I'm touchwood, I was blessed to have Drevan. That's the only name in the world, Dreyvn, Drevan, who taught me the science of ontology, which is the science of knowing who you are, your existence and being. Those 12 weeks literally transformed my life. And I had always this thing of giving gyan to people. And after the program, I realized that as a coach, in a 60-minute session, it is only 8 minutes a life coach speaks. And what does a life coach do? The life coach enables you with certain set of questions which would help you probe into or deep dive into your own self to get more clarity. I cannot say that I've got 100% right. I still continue to make mistakes at my workplace in terms of giving gyan. But I think so internally, I have come to a kind of consent and validation that the best way to get anyone perform superlative in their personal life or professional life is just to help them bring in more clarity, bring in more purpose by facilitating certain set of self-probing questions. It gives me immense sense of satisfaction because for me, the biggest point of joy in life is to see if I can, through my little awakening and awareness of self-emotional intelligence, can I create an impact in anybody's life? So while I might not have been a very successful professional in terms of creating value and wealth in spite of being 30 years in digital, but I feel very blessed by being a good human being and by showing up for my colleagues and friends at times when I believe they really needed some help. So this is the reason why a lot of people stay back to work because of the culture. And I feel happy when I see some of the little boys and girls, without formally mentoring them, but mentoring them in my own way, are doing extremely well today. So this is for me is the most joyful achievement and ROI in my life.
Wonderful. More power to you, more goodness to you, Hemant. Keep that flag flying high, I mean, I think we need more people like you, more thinking like you. And before I let you go, this is just off the cuff. I wanted to understand, because you're so much a heart over head person. and it kind of aligns beautifully with our concept of state-of-the-art branding, right? Which is the one brand that is very, very close to your heart?
I would say different journey of a point of journey of my life. There have been different brands who have kind of touched my heart, and in some cases it was just the sonic branding. In some cases it was just the storytelling. In some cases it was just the sheer delight.
You want to name some of those brands?
So I believe one campaign which kind of really changed, I would say, advertising from India to Bharat was Piyush Pandeyji's Fevicol campaign. That was the first time I felt somebody in advertising took the brand from the sheer level of insights to really a very different level of superlative thinking. Then this was this Cadbury campaign where you have this girl jumping into the ground.
Field, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. There, the whole
Kuch baat hai.
Kuch baat hai. I think so. That kind of stayed. So whether it was Cadbury's, whether it was Nirma, again, you know how they, through a single thought, single campaign, they went out to build such a large.
Over an extended period of time.
Over an extended period of time. Amul is another example. So this is also bringing me to a very, very important point, which is virality versus sustainability. So virality is more like a dopamine, which gives you a short-term spike. Speaking about our earlier conversation on content. And if you really want to build a solid business, you need to have sustainability built into your model. Unfortunately today, we are all so overwhelmed and our behavior is so determined by the number of reactions, views, engagements. We have this influencer economy booming because it's saying, oh, he's got 40 million views in 2 hours, it's amazing. I'm saying, what's your retention? Retention to intention. It's not about attention. I think so that is where, while it's a challenging situation, also impacting mental health, which can be a separate conversation altogether. But how do I bring in intention in such a overcrowded 20-second or 30-second vertical formats, which is in some way throwing up a challenge to brand marketeers, advertisers, etc., saying, what are you looking at? Are you chasing KPIs or are you chasing genuine, authentic consumer intent? So that is a space I think so we all need to watch out. And because of social media and the short format content, the impact on children. And that is where today I want to share it for the first time, that I have decided that I'm going to spend a sizable amount of my time and resource in imagining what I'm going to be doing for kids in the age group of 6 to 12 years, which is the formative period. And today, basis my conversations with a lot of clinical psychologists, I've got to know that the first sign of mental health disorders are being seen in children at 6 years and 7 years because of mobile and social media. And I'm kind of drawing up and writing my notes on what do I do to catch them early, to talk to parents, convince parents to spend more me time with the kids. And if I could do that, I think so I would be making a very significant contribution to the India of tomorrow, where I don't get impacted reading some stats which says 45% of youth in India today suffer from mental health. So I would like to kind of, wrap up this session saying, apart from some of the KPIs which we define as success and achievement in our life, I think so the true achievement lies in saying, what kind of impact have you been able to create by giving back to the society in a manner that can contribute to the growth of the nation in years to come?
Absolutely, beautifully summarized. I think there is that. I would like to kind of frame it in one line, if I can. It's like, for all the brands that are doing it, for whatever reasons, compelling or otherwise, scaling reach at the cost of skipping meaning.
Correct.
That's exactly what. And so it's a beautiful premise to kind of conclude this conversation on. And I'm sure there is far more to discuss that we can look at doing it certainly offline. More power to you. Thank you so much, Hemant, for doing this for us for SOHB Story. And all the best with all your new initiatives, both professional and personal.
Thank you, Suresh. And I just want to say that this is the first time in 30 years that I got an opportunity to really share, because all these years went by building businesses. So I have always been a backstage guy. And I never kind of got an opportunity to talk about how the last 3 decades have been. So thank you so much for having me.
So just like brands need to build bridges, you're a beautiful bridge architect yourself, right, between people, between organizations, and more power to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.